Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program today, Assemblyman Dean Murray. Dean Murray represents the 3rd Assembly District in New York State, an assembly district that includes parts of Suffolk County. We want to thank you folks all across Long Island for tuning in. Dean Murray, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
It seems like just yesterday we sat down and started up a taping of Assembly Calendar, just like this one right here, but it was at the beginning of this legislative session. We had a new governor on board, Andrew Cuomo, a whole lot of new members elected to the state legislature, and we were talking about all that this legislative session was going to bring.
Right.
And here we are today. The session's almost over already. It went pretty quick.
It went very quickly. I think one of the things was there was such focus on getting the budget done, getting it done on time, overcoming many of the obstacles in the budget process that we had, and then focusing on some major core issues, whether it be ethics reform, tax cap, all of these different issues. It's kind of, we were plodding along, getting it done, and now we're at the end saying, wow, we've got so much more to do, in so little time.
Let's go over that list, that to-do list, if you will, of what is left for this legislature to take up. And I suppose a lot of it still has to do with that budget debate that was had just a couple of months ago, because the state really is not quite out of the woods when it comes to that huge fiscal crisis that it faces.
Right. I mean, that was driving the bus, if you will, of the conversation. Was what do we do fiscally? We kind of have that in place now with the budget. We will adjust as the year goes on, but then we get into more of the outside issues there, off of the budget, and they're still left hanging there. But some also tie into it, like the tax cap, mandate relief, things of that nature. So we've got our work cut out for us these last week or so.
Well, even after that budget was put into place, it seems as if there was residual debate outside of the legislative chamber. Right. We're still hearing calls to extend the millionaire's tax.
Right.
We're still hearing calls to restore funding for education. It's like it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Right. The mantra's still there. They're still going to push for it, despite the fact the governor has said absolutely no millionaire's tax. The Senate has said absolutely no millionaire's tax. I've said I'm not going to support a millionaire's tax. But we still get the phone calls, the emails, and last week in one day alone we got over 600 faxes saying we want a millionaire's tax. I think maybe the energy could be used a little better, but there are other issues on the table right now. The tax cap, huge issue. Over 70% of the people in New York State say they want some form of tax cap. I've said all along I support a tax cap. However, we must also have that mandate relief in there as well. So we're going to be continuing to push for that. Another issue that hasn't been brought up by the governor, but it's been brought up certainly by myself and members of the Long Island delegation, is getting rid of this job-killing, unnecessary bailout that we called the MTA payroll tax.
Now, that's something that was put in place a couple years ago, and it was put in place as one of those Band-Aid approaches to dealing with the state's fiscal problems, under the catalog or category of let's get the state more revenue.
Right.
So is it something that the state can afford to do? Because this is, I'm guessing, putting some extra monies into the state's coffers at a difficult financial time.
Well, see, again, and we'll go back to the discussion of millionaire's tax. The millionaire's tax was a Band-Aid, if you will. It was a 3-year, it had a sunset date this year, and it sunset. It ended. It was there and put in place with the understanding that this is to help us get through the tough times. But over the course of those tough times, we actually increased spending. Now that's irresponsible. I'm going to say the same thing about the MTA payroll tax, and that was, they said, help, we need help, we're in trouble. So we need this, and let's be perfectly clear, it was a bailout. It was a taxpayer-funded bailout. Anytime you have businesses, for example, on the east end of Long Island, the percentage of ridership on the Long Island Railroad, when you combine it with outside of New York City, I think 93% of the use of the MTA is within New York City and the 5 boroughs. So to levy some sort of tax or bailout equally among everyone there, it's beyond unfair. But we still say it's unnecessary. There was no need for this. The fact of the matter is that they could run more efficiently and cut back on spending instead of increasing the spending and continuing the old ways that got us in trouble in the first place. So
the governor's been traveling the state talking about his agenda, the things he wants to see the legislature do. Some call it the Prod the Legislature tour that the governor's on. You're right, we don't hear anything about the MTAA tax coming from him, but from some yourself and other Long Island legislators, this seems to be topic number one. And in fact, press conference just this past week on the island talking about different ways that this thing could go and that the state could still, you know, and the MTA could still exist.
Well, this is one of those meet in the middle kind of things, and I applaud Senators Lee Zeldin and Jack Martins because they came up with a very sensible plan, and our colleague in the Assembly, George Latimer, who will be carrying this, and I'll proudly be co-sponsoring it with him, this bill to phase out the MTA payroll tax over the next 3 years. Because that is one of the obstacles we ran into. When I introduced the bill in the beginning of the year to completely eliminate the payroll tax, the answer was, well, gee, what do we do? You're taking away $1.4 billion in revenue. How can we do that? You know, it'll come crashing down. I don't believe that's true, by the way. But under this plan, it phases it out percentages at a time. And by the year 2014, on Long Island and the 7 surrounding counties, it'll be completely phased out and eliminated.
I would think that that is something that would be music to the ears of the people you represent.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a sensible solution. Would we all like to just wave a magic wand and make it disappear today? Of course. But, you know, sometimes you need to compromise, work together, and come up with a sensible solution. And this is a sensible solution. I applaud Senator Zeldin and Martins for coming up with this.
You know, I think what happens at the state capitol a lot of times is that these sorts of taxes or fee increases or whatever are put in place with the hopes that people just get used to them. Right? But this is one that the people of Long Island, the people of the northern suburbs of New York City, haven't really quite gotten used to. And they haven't let it go. And that's to their credit, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're talking about hitting nonprofits, Long Island Cares, which helps distribute to food pantries all across Long Island, when they're getting hammered with a payroll tax, hospitals, you know, Brookhaven Memorial Hospital this year will pay about $600,000 to the MTA payroll tax. You know, this is something that's you know, hard to forget about because it just hammers small businesses, not-for-profits, school districts, local governments. It's hitting us all.
And even if they had forgotten about it, what's important here is not to let up on the pressure to your representatives in Albany. People like you, Dean Murray. People like the governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo, your state senators, whoever you know you're close to, or even if you're not close to, write the letters, write the emails, make the phone calls. All we have to do is go back to your election a couple of years ago, the 2010 November elections. The people of the state, I thought, kind of got it then, that they can make a difference, that the power does reside with them, and that you can have a fair amount of sway over how these things work out.
Well, this is one we're going to work as a team. I mean, we are going to work together on this we will, and I'll make this pledge right now into the camera to everyone at home, we will not let this go. We will stick with this, whether it happens in this session, whether it rolls over and goes to the fall, goes to next year. We will not stop fighting to eliminate this tax because it is unfair, unnecessary, job-killing tax, and we just can't afford it.
We're going to show a little bit now of what you have been, the issues you have been fighting on the floor of the legislature. You've been very active in the floor debate on a number of different issues that have come up. None of them have been about the MTA payroll tax, however. The types of bills, well, there's all sorts of different types of legislation that make it to the floor of the Assembly for debate. We're going to show you one right now. Dean Murray, we're going to show you a debate on a bill that would require commercial trucks driven within New York to have those convex mirrors attached to their side view mirrors.
Right.
That's right, folks. That's what we're talking about. Now, in all fairness, this comes about as a result of some tragedies in New York City where there have been small children or other pedestrians hit by commercial trucks because, you know, in New York City, there's close quarters, big trucks, small people. I mean, it's just you can understand what we're talking about. But there's some mandates here, is what I think we're talking about.
Yeah, and that this goes to, when you see it on the surface, you say, really, we're debating about convex mirrors on trucks when we still have no tax cap in place, when we're still fighting to get rid of the MTA payroll tax. But when you look outside the box a little bit, this is almost kind of representative of what we are facing, the mindset that we're facing here that needs to change when it comes to mandates and things of that nature. How we're maybe not being as business friendly as we should, and I guess I'll explain that after we see the clip or
let's take a look at it right now. We'll do it right now. We'll take a look. Go to the floor of the Assembly. We'll be back to finish up today's Assembly calendar with Dean Murray.
I hate to sound like a broken record. I know, you get up and you talk about the business climate in New York State, and I've been told that too many times I say it's bad, but we're trying to improve the business climate here. We're trying to be more business friendly, work with the businesses in New York State. But I can give you a scenario here where you have a company in New Jersey that sends their truck driver into the city without the mirror. You have a company up in, say, in Upper Westchester County sends their truck into the city without these convex mirrors. They could end up in jail because they didn't have a mirror, where the truck driver from New Jersey or Connecticut or anywhere else is fine. If it really truly is a safety issue, then why aren't we tackling it on the federal level? Right now we seem to be singling out I would say, minority group, being the New York City companies doing business in the city, when this should apply overall if it truly is a safety issue. I just look at this as another backward step when it comes to showing the business community throughout New York State that we want to be business friendly, we want to work with them, we want to encourage them in New York City, or in New York State. So for that reason, I'll be urging my colleagues to vote against this bill. Thank you.
It's a great point. You want safety, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
And the legislature can say, if you're from outside New York and you are driving within the state's borders, yeah, we can have you not talk on your cell phone while you're driving or text. You got to wear your seatbelt, but you can't force somebody to do something physical to their vehicle, like putting a mirror on their car.
Right. The fact of the matter is that close to 60% of the trucks in Manhattan, in the city, that are there are from out of state. So you're talking about Connecticut and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, even Ohio, Maryland. You have out-of-state companies that can send their trucks in, and it's fine. So when you're passing legislation that's going to impose this, and some say, well, it's just mirrors. Well, those mirrors run about $135 each. You're going to have to put 2 of them on there, so you're talking about $270 per truck. When you think of a company that has a fleet of maybe 1,000 trucks, you're talking $270,000 for a New York trucking company, whereas the one in Jersey or Connecticut or some doesn't have to put it on. So again, it's just sending the wrong message. If it's a safety issue, let's take it on the federal level. Let's team up as New York State legislators, contact our federal representatives, and let's push this on the federal level.
And it's another example of where it would put the New York trucking companies at a disadvantage to their counterparts nearby, just across the river, whatever it may be.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that's taking place on the Assembly floor. We will be talking, I'm sure, in our next program about the windup of this legislative session, about a property tax cap, about the MTA payroll tax, ethics reform, all those other issues that are still on that to-do list, that ever-elusive to-do list. Dean Murray, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mike.
We want to let you folks know how you can reach your representative. As we said earlier, the power does reside with the people. Let your representative know what's on your mind. Contact Dean Murray at his office in Medford. Dial 207-0073 or send an email to murrayd@assembly.state.ny.us. As we thank Dean Murray for joining us, thank you folks too. Hope to see you soon for our next Assembly Calendar.